Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 of the Come On I Wanna Ruana crochet along. In part 3 we we began at part 3 at the neck here, and we worked another 23 inches until we get to the bottom front here. At the end of part 3, you should have ended on an odd numbered row. So on the left side here, as you're looking down on your Ruana. On the left side on this one, and then when you on the actual left side, you should end on the left side over here as well, since they're both going to be odd rows. If you're left-handed, it will be the opposite, so keep that in mind. Now, when we start this, we need to be over here because we are going to do single crochets all the way across to kind of sturdy up that bottom edge and create something that we can work our lover's knots into. So we're going to start part 4. So where you are still attached from the end of part 3, I did have to start a new skein here, so I made it with almost the entire cake all the way down. Go ahead and start a new skein if you need to. I'm assuming you will if you're using the same yarn as I am. And now we are going to do row 130, or whatever row it is for you after the 23 inches. You're going to chain 1 and turn. And now we are going to single crochet in the very first chain space. This chain 1 does not count as a stitch for this or the rest of the pattern. So we're going to single crochet in that first chain space. And now we're going to single crochet in each stitch slash chain to the end. So we're going to go in this one, we're going to go in that chain, we're going to go in this one, we're going to go in that chain, in this stitch, in that chain, in that stitch, etc. all the way to the end. When we get to the end of this row, we should have 69 stitches. So there's one. Let's go all the way down. $66, $67, $68, and the top of this last stitch is going to be 69. All right, so you end with 69 stitches on row 130. So if this for you, if 23 inches got you to 133, you know, as long as you ended on an odd number, then this would be row 134, obviously. But you want to end with 69 stitches at the end here. To start the next, we're going to chain 1, we're going to turn, and now we're going to start our lover's knot bits going across the top here, okay? So you chained 1 and you turned. We're going to put a single crochet in that very first stitch. Now we're going to lover's knot 2 times, like we did at the very beginning in part 1. You're going to lover's knot 2 times. Skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go into this one right here with a single crochet. I'm going to do 2 more sets, or 1 more set, 2 more lover's knots. I'm going to skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and go into this one right here. Single crochet, 2 lover's knots. Skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, go into that 4th one. We're going to complete this all the way to the end of the row, and when we get to the end of this row, we should have 17 lover's knot sets. 17 is the number that we had when we started row, or the center part, you remember? The center column, we had 17 on each side, so we should still have 17. If you adjusted the width of your Ruana, to make it more narrow or more wide, then you're going to need to have whatever you had when you started that center column in part 1. You're going to want to have that many. So if you have 16, then have 16. If you have 18 or 19, then that's fine too. Just make sure that it matches whatever you had. When you get to the end, when you skip 3, your very last stitch is going to be a single crochet, just like we did in the lover's knots portion at the beginning of the pattern. So before we move any further, let's make sure that we have 17 of these lover's knot sets. So you're going to count the top single crochet right in between these to make sure that we have 17. Perfect. Beautiful. 17 lovely little lover's knot sets. So now let's open these up a little bit more by adding a few more rows. You're not going to have as many lover's knots on the front portion as you did on the back. If you want this to be longer, you can add as many as you want as long as you have enough yarn to do so. It doesn't really matter. I did it shorter because I felt like it, I don't know, it looked better to me. So, and and that's just how I liked it. So that's what we did. So I'm going to start the next row. Let's zoom in just a little bit. To start that next row, we're going to start with a half of a lover's knot, right? Just like we did earlier. So to start this row, we are going to chain 4. We're going to lover's knot 1 time. Now we're going to turn it over and we're going to place that single crochet right in the top of that lover's knot right there. So let's do a single crochet there. Now we're going to do 2 lover's knots. And go into the top of the next set, all the way to the end of the row. So really all we're doing here is the exact same thing that we did in part 1. It's just a narrower piece. So this is easy peasy. Next, when we finish this side, which is going to be done here in just a few minutes, we are going to complete the same exact thing on the other front. So this is the right front. We're going to do the same exact thing on the left front because we ended on the same odd numbered row. It's exactly the same thing. When you get to the end of this row, you're going to have only half of a lover's knot left. So we're going to do what we did in the beginning, where we do a lover's knot 1 time, and then we triple crochet or treble crochet, so wrap it twice and go into that last stitch right here. So at the end of this row, at the end of row 132, you should have half of a lover's knot on this side, 16 full lover's knots, and then half on this side over here. Oops. Don't lose my stitch. Okay, I got it. So now we are going to do row 133, 134, and 135 in exactly the same manner. Since this is a starting row with the lover's knots, you're going to just do 1 chain. We're going to turn it. We're going to do our single crochet right in the top of that first stitch, and then we're going to do our lover's knots all the way to the end of the row. So I'm going to continue adding lover's knot rows, and when I get done with that portion, I will hook up with you. Just keep adding these lover's knots just like we did in part 1, and then we'll hook up together to finish off this side. Right now I am at the end of my 6th row, of lover's knots. So I'm going to do half of my lover's knot and treble crochet in the last stitch. Now you have 6 rows of lover's knots here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 rows of lover's knots on the front. Now we are ready for the very last row of the right side. So grab where you're still attached at the end of this row. You're going to chain 1, turn, single crochet in that very first stitch, loosely chain 3, 1, 2, 3, not super loose like we did earlier. Skip the bottom of that lover's knot and do a single crochet in the top of the next set. And repeat this to the end of the row. When we get to the end, we should end with 69 stitches between the chains and the single crochets. When you get to the end here, go into the chain 4 like we usually do when we do our lover's knots. We're going to do our last single crochet in there. All right, and so now that we have these chains going across the whole entire top, zoom back out a little bit. Now that we have these chains making the flat edge across the top and we're on the right side, make sure you're on the right side that you're finishing first, we're going to go ahead and fasten off only on the right side. I'm just going to clip that here. Go ahead and pull that through. Beautiful. So now we are completely finished with the right front. When we put the border on, it's going to help open up these knots, so don't freak out just yet. So now that we've got the right side done, I'm going to move my piece over, pull down the left side, and where we're still attached, we are going to do the same exact thing that we just did on the other side. So we are going to start this by doing our chain and then our single crochets along this whole entire row, and then add 6 rows of lover's knots, and then do another chain just like we did where you loosely chain 3, go into the next, loosely chain, and then you're going to end up right over here. So go ahead and add this portion here to this portion here, and I will meet up with you when I get to the top here. If you need to rewind to follow along again, that's perfectly fine, and I'll give you the time that you need to rewind to. So I am going to work on this side myself, and when I finish the front on the left side, then we will hook up again and we will be ready to do the border and the finishing touches, and we are so close to being done. I'm so excited. I'll see you guys here in just a few minutes and we will work on that border together. I have just finished my last single crochet on the flat edge of the left front. So right now I am at the left side of the left front, so the outermost left corner on the front. Now we're going to start our border, which will really pull everything together, and we are so close to being done. It's so exciting. To do the border, to start, we are going to chain 1, and then we're going to place 4 half double crochets up each lover's knot. So we're going to do 3 around this chain and 1 in the side of that single crochet. And then we're going to do 3 around this chain and 1 in the side of that single crochet. So go ahead and chain 1. We're going to do 3 half double crochets around this chain. 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to go into the side of this single crochet. I don't like going into this hole here because I feel like it leaves a gap in between these. I like to actually go into the side of the stitch. So I'm going to yarn over for my half double and go into the side of that single crochet. Now we're going to do 3 around this chain space. 1, 2, 3. 1 in the side of that single crochet through the middle of it. We're going to do 3 around this chain right here. 1, 2, 3. Into the side of that single crochet. So now we've worked our way with the border up the entire just lover's knots portion right here. Now we're going to continue doing half double crochets up the entire row ends. So I like to do it 1 in the side of this one, so we're just going to go in right here. Now we're going to go around this half double crochet itself, so right in that chain space, or not really a chain space, but in that space. Now we're going to go in this next hole here, half double crochet. We're going to go in this hole here. So you're really just going around either that half double crochet itself. This one is a chain, so you're just going to go into these gaps and complete these half double crochets. And you're going to do this all the way around the whole entire thing, okay? Until you get back to where we just started. So I'm continuing with my half double crochets. Okay, now we have worked this entire side here with our half double crochets going into the row ends. And that look nice? Looks so pretty. So when you get to the other side over here, and you might need to kind of relax these a little bit, and that is perfectly fine. When you get to the end over here, this is the back bottom left side, right? Since we're going up that whole piece. Now I went ahead and went into the side here. I'm going to go into this side here, which is actually a single crochet. And now I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the other side. So I did 1 here. Now I'm going to do 3 around this chain or stitch here. 2, 3, and 1 into the side. 1, 2, 3, and 1 into the side. There we go. 1, 2, 3, and now we're at the very end over here, so I'm going to go 1 in the side, and I'm going to do 3 half double crochets in this corner stitch. So you can do it in this one in the side of the single crochet or in this chain right here. It doesn't really matter as long as you get 3 in this corner. I'm going to do them in this chain here. You want 3 in each corner because that makes it a nice corner instead of a round. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 in that corner. Okay, and now we're going to turn somehow so that we can go along the bottom. So this is the back bottom of the Ruana. So now we're going to do the same exact thing with the 3 in 1 bit all the way across the bottom. So now we've got a chain here, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3 into the single. Okay, now 1, 2, 3, and into that single. Just repeat this process all the way to the other corner, and we'll put 3 half double crochets in that corner stitch as well. This is really going to start giving it some nice shaping, right? And then we're going to add a few more rows of the border, and it looks so nice. It's one thing that I like too about adding the border to this. The weight of that really does clean things up and just really make it pop. Okay, when you get to the end of the bottom, to the other side, this is where we started the very first chain together. You're going to do 3 in that last stitch. Just going to go into the side of that one there. We're going to do 3 right there, since it's a corner. 3 in that corner stitch. Okay, now we're ready to turn. So now we're going to go back up the right side of the Ruana, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to do 3 around here, 1 in here, 3 around here, 1 in here, 3 around here, 1 in here, and then we're going to do the same thing with the half double crochet all the way up here. I'm going to continue crocheting just like I have been this whole time. When we get up to the neck corner where our neck is, we're going to hook back up because I want to make sure that we do that part correctly together. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue adding my half double crochets as I have been doing this whole time, and I will hook up with you when we get to the neck corners together. Okay, I'm working my way up to the neck here on the inside. I've gone ahead and woven this in all the way up to the top. Now so that I'm ready to go around this for the border row, I've gone into this stitch right here. Now I'm going to jump over and go around the top of our center column that we created in part 2. So I'm still going to leave this tail here from where we sewed this up because I want to use this to cinch up any holes that we'll have at the end. So I'm just going to pull this over to the side and try to hold that as well as I can, and I'm going to start going around the chain space there. So I'm going to do 3 around this chain space, and then 1 in the single crochet, and continue across the neck. 1, 2, 3, and 1 in the single, and then 1, 2, 3, and 1 in the single. So if you're looking down at this, excuse me, if you're looking down at this, you're going to want to pull this tail just a little bit tight, and see how that has that hole right there? We're going to fix that when we go through and weave in our ends, and on the next part of the border it will look nicer. So now I'm just going to continue going across the neck and then all the way down to where we started the beginning of the border. When we start row 2 of the border, we're going to make sure we go into a specific loop. So we're going to want to capture that as well. All right, we are approaching the first stitch of this border. So this is the first stitch that we did for the border here. So I'm going to place 2 in this last stitch because you want to have 3 stitches in your corners, right? So we started with 1, so I'm going to put 2 more. So now instead of joining to the top of this stitch right here, we're going to turn it just a little bit to where we're looking at the back side, and we're going to crochet into the 3rd loop of the half double crochet. So if you have never worked into the 3rd loop of half double crochet, we're going to zoom in here, take a little close up. Oops, about dropped the whole thing. Let me grab my pointer. The 3rd loop is located towards the back of the stitch. So on a regular half double crochet, you've got this front stitch, or the front loop here, the back loop here, and then this guy back here is the 3rd loop. So if we look at one farther down, we've got the front loop here, the back loop here, and then this is the third loop. So you're always going to go into the back side here for the next 2 rows of the border, okay? So when we start this, zoom back out just a little bit. When we start this, instead of joining, we're not going to join for rows 2 or 3. We're just going to yarn over like we're doing a regular half double crochet, and we're going to insert our hook into the third loop. So this one right here. We're going to complete our half double crochet right in there. And now we're just going to go into the next one and continue making our half double crochets in the third loop. And we're going to do this around the entire Ruana. Okay, we're going to do it for rows 2 and rows 3. Now, you still, when you get to the next corner, you're still going to want to put 3 of these half double crochets in the third loop of the corner stitches. Okay, so you're still going to do that. It's going to start to lay like this to where they're kind of stacked on top of each other. Here's the first one, and then here's another one, and then we're going to do another row behind that. When we're done, it'll lay nicely and it'll look really nice. So I'm going to continue going around the entire Ruana all the way back to around the entire thing. When I get to the neck portion where we just crocheted these beautiful half double crochets, we're going to I'm going to include this in the video because we're going to put 3 of these together. So I'm going to crochet from where I am over here at the beginning of row 2 all the way around the bottom, up this side, and then when I get to right here, we're going to hook back up and we're going to do this part together. And then we'll be ready to finish row 3, and then we'll be ready to do all of the finishing touches and weave in our ends and everything else. So I'm going to continue crocheting this border row, and I will hook up with you guys very, very soon. Okay, I've made it all the way up to the inside neck corner, and you can see that my second row here is coming along nicely. When we get to these stitches right here, let me go one more, and then I'll zoom in and show you what I'm about to do. Okay, in the next 3 stitches, these are the ones that are in the most corner of this neck corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all 3 of these together, and that will kind of help pull it together just a little bit to keep it nice and stable in the corner of your neck. So I'm going to do a half double crochet in the third loop only of this stitch, and this stitch. So the last one on your side, the one that straddles these two kind of, and then the first one on this side. So I'm just going to do those 3 all together. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to pull up a loop in this stitch right here, and then I'm just going to pull up a loop in this next one right here, third loop, and then I'm going to pull it up in this one right here. So these are all 3 of those stitches put together. And now I'm just going to yarn over and pull through all of them. And now I can continue working across the neck in that third loop, just like we've been doing this whole time. And then when we get to the other side, we're going to do the same thing with those 3 stitches. So I'll just work all the way across here. Almost there. Okay, so here we are. We've got the last one on the center part, the one that kind of straddles both, and then the first one on the side over here. So I'm going to do the same thing where I yarn over, and I'm going to pull up a loop in this one, and then this one, and then this one, just like that. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all of them on my hook. And now it creates kind of a nice little transition here. It just looks more professional. We do still have this little gap here, which honestly it's not that bad, especially since we've got all of this holiness going on. We are going to use this later to weave this all in and cinch this up just a little bit on both sides. So now I am going to continue by going down this whole front inside here around the bottom, and then I'm going to do one more entire row. I'm going to go one more entire row around the whole entire thing, and then when I get done to the end over here, this is where I started row 1, and this is where I started row 2. When I get back over here, I'm going to start row 3, and then when I get done with row 3, I will meet you up, and we will finish this whole thing together. I have just finished the final row of my border. It's got this great, beautiful edging to it. You might notice that along the sides here, you might need to relax your half double crochets. So all I do is kind of gently pull on it just a little bit, and it makes them lay nicer. So you might do that all the way around. Go ahead and fasten off where we're at. So I'm going to clip this yarn over here. I've still got a decent ball left, so that's exciting. I'm going to save it for something else. I'm going to pull this, do a slip stitch into the next, to the third loop of that next half double crochet. I'm just going to do a slip stitch in here to kind of pull that in, and then I'm going to pull this all the way through. And then I'm going to weave my yarn needle, thread my yarn needle. And I'm just going to go into see how I did my slip stitch into this one here? I'm going to go into the next one and use that to take it to the back of the piece. Pull it down like that, so now it looks nice. And now I'm going to weave in the ends over here to make it to where it's not as obvious where the join is. So now I'm going to weave in this end, pull that up there, make it come back the other direction. Make sure it's nice and hidden and woven in. Just going to weave in these ends really well. Made it all the way down to my first border row, so I'm going to go through those stitches, and I'll call that good. Nice. So now I'm going to clip that. Perfect. So now we are going to weave in our ends at our shoulder pieces, right? So here's our shoulder. It's starting to take a lot better shape, right? And not be so wonky looking. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So let me get all situated. The weight of the back is starting to pull down on the back here. Okay, so now we're going to want to weave in these ends that we've been leaving this whole time, these two that are at the corners. This is from where we were sewing in the sides to the back here. So I'm going to thread my needle, and we're going to weave in these ends. And all you're doing here is you're just making sure that it looks nice and clean. Let me zoom in. We're just making sure that it looks nice and clean in these corners where we've attached. So I'm going to kind of cinch up this hole right here. If you don't have a hole there, that's fine. It all just really depends on how you sew it, etc. So I'm just going to kind of weave in so that we're cinching up this hole just a little bit. Try to make it look as natural as possible. Looking good. You don't want to pull it too tight because then it'll start to pucker. Just tight enough to where it's not going anywhere. See, there we go. That's looking nice. Go up into this one. There we go. So now I'm just going to kind of weave in my ends here. I'm a super weaver inner. I like to weave my ends in very, very thoroughly, especially on a pressure point like this where we're going to be, there's going to be some pressure because of where it sits on your body, on your shoulder. So now I'm just going to weave it in here, and then I'll clip this yarn. And then we'll go over and do the other side. Done with that one. So this short one is where I fastened off from when I was crocheting the centerpiece. So I'm just going to weave in that end like normal. I'm just going to weave it up in here because this is already fastened off and everything. I'm just going to weave it up in here through this first row of the border just to kind of hide that tail. Looks good. Now we're going to do the final, which is this one here, and we're going to cinch up that hole if there's anything left to cinch up. Let's take a look. It looks all right. There's a little bit of a hole here, but I think we can just probably go ahead and weave in ends and call that good because it doesn't look too bad. Now I'm just going to weave in the ends like normal, down that first row of the border, just through those half double crochets that we did on row 1 of the border. Looks good. Snip that end. And now that you've done the shoulder stitches there, now you are free to weave in all of the other ends all across your whole entire Ruana. Now I only have a few ends to weave in. I've got one where I attached new yarn at the bottom of my front right panel here, so I'll weave in these, you know, by myself. You don't need to watch me do that. But then there's one over here as well from the other front panel, and then I've got where I started at the very beginning of our Ruana where we did our chain. There's this to weave in, and unless you have any knots or you had to join more, which I didn't have a single knot in my whole entire yarn for this project, which is pretty impressive. I'm excited about it. So see how this is kind of starting to open up? When you get your shoulders in there, it's going to go poke and it's going to look amazing. So the very last thing that we have to do for this entire Ruana, we're going to take it and we're going to fold it at the shoulders here. So when I say the shoulders, I mean hold it up at the neck, right? So that this falls to the front like this. Position it here. Okay, so here we have the shoulder up at the top. Sorry, I don't have enough space. Okay, so we've got our shoulder up at the top, right? So this is the back and we're looking at the inside of the Ruana to where this is the right side. Your head's going to be right here and this is going to be your right front side, okay? Make sure that these at the top shoulder line up like this, okay? And you're going to want to do both sides. Do it on a table or something where you can set it all out and make sure that it's laid nicely flat down the center like this on both sides, okay? So now you're going to line up your outer edges here and notice that the front is a bit shorter than the back. Not too much, but it is a little bit shorter. So you want to make sure that you're lining up the shoulder here instead of the bottom, okay? Otherwise your neck's going to sit funky. So fold it over where the shoulder will be, right? Lay it flat, make sure it's nice and laid out like this. Like this. Now, as I said earlier, I like to kind of pull these half doubles on the border rows just to make them relax a little bit. So now that we've got this laying nice and perfect with our shoulder up here and everything's flat, we're going to look at the outer edge. So at the outside, this is going to be where our right arm goes through. And of course, on the other side, your left arm is going to be coming out that side, right? So take your measuring tape and we're going to measure 9 inches down from the top. So this is our right elbow will be right here. We're going to measure 9 inches down, and at 9 inches we're going to sew for 4 inches. So between 9 and 13 we are going to sew these two sides together, just right through this whole part right here. So I would grab a new piece of yarn, right? This is from my leftover ball. I had a ton left over. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew starting right here. And I personally like to go up through the center of the second row, that half double crochet. You don't have to, but I think it looks nice. So I'm going to go in the back of the center here, and then I'm going to find the center of this one here. Okay, and now that's 9 inches down from the shoulder. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail, just enough to weave it in at the end. And now, without disrupting this too much, because I want to make sure that this is perfectly lined up as I sew for those 4 inches, I'm just going to kind of pinch it, and I'm going to go into the next stitch here and make sure I'm coming out of the next stitch in the back. So I always like to come in and out of the center of the second row. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you just want to sew it up. It'll come out fine. I would not do it on the edge stitches though, because you want it to be very stable. You want it to go through the entirety of the fabric and not just the edge, right? So I'm going to go back and forth just a little bit for those 4 inches. We're just going to sew it together. You could use stitch markers to mark where you went in. I'm just going to pull this tight so that I can see exactly where I'm at and go 4 inches down from there. So you can, if you want to, put stitch markers in. Might actually be a good idea. Keep it from moving around while you're sewing. I did, on my original, I did do 2 passes sewing because I wanted to make sure that it was super sturdy. So I've already gone about 2.5 inches, so I need to go a bit more. So when we pick it up, see how it's perfectly together. Let me measure again after this stitch. Should have used stitch markers. Maybe I'll do that on the other side. Almost. Let's do one more stitch. And if you want to sew it up more, I mean, it's not going to hurt anything. Perfectly fine. So now on my original, I went back up this column. I think I'm going to do that on this one too, just to make sure that it's not going anywhere. Straight back and forth and back and forth. Okay, now I'm going to weave in my ends, and so now you can see here that for 4 inches my armhole has been created, and then this is just going to flow nicely and beautifully from the front. So I'm going, for sake of video purposes, I'm going to weave in these ends separately, but I am going to go ahead and plot out the other side so that you can see how to do the other side as well. So since we've already done the right side, we're going to make sure over here that the left side is lined up just like we did the other, how it's nice and lined up over here for the shoulder. Make sure that's nice and flat. Obviously on a larger workspace than I have here. And goes across Nice. So now we are going to measure from 9 inches. Hold this up. We're going to do 9 inches. So I'm going to start this one right here, and I'm going to do the same exact thing I did on the other side. I'm going to sew between 9 and 13 for these 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this up over here, weave in all of my ends throughout the entire Ruana from where I started and then where I added on my new skeins. And then, you guys, we are completely done. So I'm going to weave in these ends, and then I'm going to take my beautiful Ruana outside on my beautiful mannequin named Catherine and take some video of it flapping in the breeze because it's just beautiful, and this drape is just gorgeous. So I hope you all have sincerely enjoyed working on this Ruana with me, and I hope it will not be your last. I hope it's one of many beautiful Come On I Wanna Ruanas, and I cannot wait to see yours when you're finished. Please share a photo with me. You can send it to Ashley at hearthookhome.com. You can share it on my Facebook page or in my Facebook group, which is Heart Hook Home Crochet Community. Thank you for watching, guys.